Batman, Shadow the Demon, Part 2. Gotham City, New Jersey, July 2003, in the Batcave beneath Wayne Manor. Bruce, along with Dick, were reverse engineering that bizarre energy gun that they recovered during the fight at the Research Institute. After Bruce had finished taking it apart, Dick asked him, "So Bruce, what is that thing?" And Bruce says to Dick, "Well, from what I could guess, taking it apart, it's some sort of energy gun, and I believe it runs on the principle of fission." And Dick says, "Fission? You mean splitting the atoms?" And Bruce says, "Yes." And then he holds up the lead-shielded radium cartridge. And Bruce goes on to explain to Dick, "I believe, Dick, that this thing shoots a beam of neutrons, and wherever you shoot the beam of neutrons at, it does just like fission does. It splits apart the atoms of the target and disintegrates it. It's a very ingenious invention," says Bruce, and Bruce wonders who was the one that made this gun. Then Bruce says to Dick, "Dick, just catalog everything and we'll put it back together later. I'm going to check the Bat computer and see if it identified any of the guys on the security feed from the Research Institute." Bruce looks at the Bat computer, and the Bat computer was only able to identify one man. The computer identified him as 38 years old, Anthony Melchek. And he had a long history of priors, and he was currently staying at a flop house known as the House of the Open Door. And then Bruce says to Dick, "Well, Dick, tonight I'll pay Mr. Melchek a visit. After he put this ray gun back together, you can stay here. I won't need your help tonight," he says. Well, night had fallen, and Anthony Melchek was walking down the somewhat unusually quiet sidewalk at one of Gotham's red light districts. He was heading towards his usual hangout, a very infamous strip club. As he was walking, suddenly he steps on a snare and he's pulled up to the rooftop of one of the small buildings. Then suddenly a gloved hand grabs his hair and pulls his head up, and Melchek sees it was Batman, and he says aloud, "Oh my God, you're real!" And Batman says,
"Yes, I am, and you better talk unless you don't want to really fall down from here."
And Melchek says with panic in his voice, okay, what do you want to know? I'll say anything. Just don't let me fall, please," he says to Batman. And Batman says to Melchek,
"The institution robbery from last night, who was behind it? Who do you work for?"
Melchek spilt the beans, identifying Foster as the leader, and even going as far as to describe Foster in full detail. He described that Foster had a big cut on top of his right wrist. Batman then knocked out Melchek, and later we see the Batmobile pull up to Captain Arnold's police station, and the passenger door flies open, and the unconscious Melchek falls right out onto the curb, and the Batmobile speeds off. Two police officers come outside after hearing the screeching of the Batmobile taking off, and they find the unconscious Melchek on the ground, and one of the policemen says, "Ugh, these drunks, they have no respect. Look where he's at." Then they had noticed that this drunk guy had both of his hands zipped locked together and a note pinned to him. The other police officer says, "I betcha it's a gift from the Batman." They pick up Melchek and then walk him inside the police station. There, Captain Arnold reads the note that Batman left him, and he says, "All right, boys, put him in my favorite suite, and if any nosy reporters come around here, you guys take credit for the capture. That's the commissioner's orders." Later, at the hideout of Dr. Daka, Dr. Daka was screaming at his men, saying, "I can't believe you incompetent idiots. Thanks to you, we have lost the neutron gun, and who knows who has it." And one of the men speaks up saying, "But Dr. Daka, maybe somebody at the Research Institute may have it." And Daka says, "Yes, I have figured that." And he turns to Foster and says to Foster, "Foster, get that gun back any way you can." And Foster says, "Yes, sir, Dr. Daka." Later, at the office of Linda Page, she gets a telephone call. She picks it up, and it was her uncle. And she says, "Uncle Martin, what's going on?" And Martin says over the phone, I can't talk, Linda. I'm in danger. Come tonight to the Blue Parrot Club. I'll be there. Come alone, please. Then he hangs up. But it was not her uncle. It was Foster using a voice changer that had the sample of her uncle's voice. And the guy that was standing next to Foster when he was making that call asked Foster, do you think she's going to fall for it? And Foster says, yes, she's going to fall for it. If anyone knows the whereabouts of that neutron gun, it would surely be the head of the research institute, he says to the guy. Meanwhile, at the offices of Bruce Wayne at the Wayne Foundation, he gets a telephone call from Linda, and Linda says to him, Bruce, listen, I just got a call from my Uncle Martin. He wants me to meet him tonight at the Blue Parrot Club. And Bruce says, okay, I'll go with you. We could do a little dancing and some dining before he shows up. And then Linda says to Bruce, no, Bruce, he wants me to come alone. He says he's in danger. And Bruce says to Linda, Linda, I don't like the sound of that. That doesn't sound like Dr. Page. And Linda says to Bruce, it's okay, Bruce. I trust my uncle. And then Bruce says, let me come, please. And Linda says, no. My uncle is very adamant that I show up alone. And then Bruce says to Linda, Linda, at least inform the police. And Linda says no, because if I do, they may show up at the Blue Parrot. And then she says, don't worry, Bruce, I'll call you back later when everything gets solved. And then she hangs up. And Bruce says aloud, dang it! And then he grabs the phone and calls Dick at the manor. And he says, Dick, get my disguise kit ready. Looks like me and you are going to the Blue Parrot tonight, he says. Later, at Wayne Manor, Bruce was dressed in a dinner suit, and he was putting on his disguise, which was a auburn wig and a pencil-thin auburn mustache. Once that was on, then he puts on his fake round-rimmed glasses, and he asks Dick, so how do I look, Dick? And Dick says, you look like a serial killer. And Bruce lets out a slight chuckle, and he says, come on, let's go. Later at the Blue Parrot, it was a very high-class jazz nightclub. It was expensive to get in, and the food there was expensive, but there was fine jazz music played by a live band, and plenty of dancing if you were in the mood. And Linda had just arrived. She was wearing a nice, sparkling blue dress, and she was waiting for her uncle. Unbeknownst to her, the disguised Bruce Wayne had arrived, and he was sitting 3 tables away from her, and he was keeping a close eye on her. Then Bruce pulls out his cell phone and his Bluetooth earpiece, and he puts it in his ear, and he says quietly in a low whisper, okay, Robin, I'm in, and I got a visual on Linda. You keep your eyes peeled for the front of the club, in case her uncle, or who's ever trying to pretend to be her uncle, shows up. And Robin acknowledges it, and he sits comfortably in the driver's seat of the Batmobile, keeping his eyes glued onto the front of the nightclub. 20 minutes had passed when the waiter comes up to Linda's table and says, excuse me, Miss Page, we have a phone call for you at the front desk. You could take it at one of our phone booths by the restrooms in back. Linda says to the waiter, thank you, sir. Unbeknownst to her, the disguised Bruce Wayne that was sitting 3 tables away was listening via a directional microphone hidden in his cell phone that was on the table pointed towards her direction. Bruce Wayne decided to wait a few moments before he would go and see what was going on. Linda reaches to the back of the club. She gets into the phone booth and closes the door behind her. She grabs the phone, and when she was about to say Uncle Martin, suddenly gas comes out. Linda loses consciousness, and as she was about to fall, suddenly the back wall of the phone booth opens up and several pair of hands emerge, grab her, and then drag her in, and the secret wall closes. Bruce Wayne had just arrived after it happened, and Linda was not in the phone booth. He wondered if she was in a ladies' room, and Bruce waited for a few minutes until a woman was on her way to the ladies' room. And then Bruce asked the lady, excuse me, madam, my girlfriend went into the ladies' room after she felt violently ill, if you're going in there, can you see if she's okay? Her name is Linda Page. And the lady says to Bruce, yes, sir, just give me a moment. Well, the woman goes into the ladies' room, calls out for Linda, and checks all the stalls, and it was empty. And then she quickly comes back out and says to the disguised Bruce Wayne, excuse me, sir, I don't see your woman in there. And then the disguised Bruce says, well, thank you. And then he runs off. Well, he runs out of the blue parrot and he runs towards the Batmobile. And Robin gets out of the Batmobile and asks Bruce where Linda was. And Bruce says to Robin, I don't know. They must have got her and taken her out from some other exit. And Bruce tells Robin to drive as both of them get into the Batmobile and drive off. As Robin was driving, Bruce reaches for the back of the Batmobile and pulls a box full of wigs and makeup, and then he begins to take off his fake glasses and the mustache and wig, and he begins to don another disguise. Soon the Batmobile parks itself in a back alley near the House of the Open Door. Bruce emerges from the passenger side of the Batmobile, now in another disguise. He had put on makeup to make himself look older and a blonde-colored wig, and he was wearing a beat-up fedora and some rather ragged-looking clothing, looking like some vagrant or a drifter, while Dick had his Robin costume off and emerged from the Batmobile wearing pants, a Boys and Girls Club t-shirt, and a cap, and he had a box of candy with him. And then Bruce says to Dick, okay, let's see if our communicators are working. And the two of them put the Bluetooth earpiece in their ears, and the microphone was hidden inside their wristwatches, and they tested it out as Bruce was saying, testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, and Dick says, hear you loud and clear, man. Then the two exit the alleyway, and they head out to the front of the House of the Open Door. And then the disguised Bruce Wayne goes inside the House of the Open Door, while the disguised Dick Grayson was screaming, selling his candy, saying, candy, candy, get your candy here. While Bruce was inside the lobby of the House of the Open Door, it was any typical lobby of a flop house. Dirty, dingy. The furniture at least had to be 25 years old, and the people that were in there were, let's just say, very down on their luck. Well, as Bruce was waiting in the lobby, the clerk had noticed the disguised Bruce Wayne, and he asked him, hey, Mac, you need a room for the night? And then the disguised Bruce says, disguised in his voice, nah, buddy, I'm just here waiting for a friend. He told me to meet him out here tonight. Then, when no one was looking, Bruce quickly ran up the stairs to where the rooms were. While outside of the flop house, Foster was coming down the sidewalk, and Dick was still screaming, selling candy. And when he turns around, he had noticed that Foster was coming up to the stoop of the flop house. And then Dick says, hey, mister, you want to buy some candy? It's a port to our local club. And Foster says, sure, kid, how much are they? And Dick says, they're $1 a pop, mister. And Foster says, okay, kid, I'll buy 5 of them. And he gives Dick a $5 bill. And as he was giving Dick the $5 bill, Dick had noticed on his right hand there was a huge scar on the top wrist, just like the guy that described Foster to Batman. Foster walks off of 5 chocolate bars and goes into the flop house. Then Dick speaks into his wristwatch saying, Batman, come in, Batman, come in. That guy with the scar on top of his right wrist has just entered the House of the Open Door. And then Bruce on the 3rd floor of the flop house says into his wristwatch, excellent, Robin. All right, go and change. I'll be down shortly. Meanwhile, downstairs in the lobby, Foster walks up to the clerk's desk, and the clerk says, you need a room for the night, mister? And then Foster says, yes. And then the clerk says, well, sir, you have to register. It's the law. And as the clerk hands the ledger to Foster, Foster places his right hand on a part of the desk. Soon a light glows. It was a handprint scanner, and it scanned Foster's handprint, and he checked out. Soon Foster signs the ledger, and the clerk says to him, it's going to be room 50 on the 3rd floor, sir, and he gives Foster the key. Foster thanks him, and he walks up the stairs. Finally, Foster reaches the 3rd floor, and the disguised Bruce Wayne hid in an empty room. Soon, Foster goes up to room 50, takes out the key, and unlocks the door and enters the room. The room was empty, he was the only one in there, and then he walks over to the far end of the room to the closet. He opens the closet. Of course, the closet was empty, there was no clothes hanging in there, and he feels the wall of the closet until he stumbles upon a hidden switch. He presses the switch, and the back wall of the closet slides open, revealing a hidden room. Foster walks through the hidden door into the hidden room, and in the hidden room were several of his men, a tied up Linda Page, and against the wall was several tall control panels. It was unknown if it was a computer or some sort of fancy communication system. Also, to the center of the room was a table full of beakers of different chemicals. Foster asked his guys, "So, did she talk?" And one of the guys says to Foster, "Nah, man, she's really holding up." And Foster says, "Don't worry, she'll crack." Well, outside of room 50, the disguised Bruce Wayne emerged from the room he was hiding in. Seeing the room where Foster went in, he decided to go down and changed into Batman. Soon enough, the Batmobile pulls into the alley between the House of the Open Door and another building, and Batman and Robin emerge. And then Batman points out to Robin, saying,
That's it. That's the room right there where they have Linda at. Come on, let's grapple up there, Robin.
Then Batman and Robin pull out their grapple guns and grapple up to the window. Batman and Robin were now on the third floor ledge, shimmying their way to the window. Meanwhile, in the hidden room, Foster was interrogating Linda as he slapped her across the face. And he says to her, "All right, lady, where is that fancy gun?" And Linda was like, "I don't know about any fancy gun." And then Foster slaps Linda across the face again. And he says to her, "If you don't talk, I'm going to start balling up my fist." Suddenly, Batman and Robin jump through the window. And soon, a violent fight ensued between Foster's goons and Batman and Robin. During the fight, Robin kicked a guy onto the center table with all the chemicals, and of course, the table flipped over and all the chemicals fell onto the ground, while Batman kicked one of the goons, causing him to fall against the control panel of the wall. And of course, the goon got electrocuted, and the control panel shorted out, causing an electrical fire. Foster and his men quickly run out of the hidden room and lock the hidden door, trapping Batman and Robin and Linda Page inside. And then Batman says to Robin,
Quick, Robin, jump out the window and glide down to safety. I'm going to toss you Linda and you catch her.
Robin acknowledges it and jumps out of the window and glides down to safety. And then Batman quickly grabs the still tied and terrified Linda Page and tosses her out the window. And sure enough, Robin was able to catch Linda perfectly, just taking a few steps back after she landed in his arms from being thrown from a third floor window. Then Batman quickly leaps out and glides down to safety as the electric fire was reaching the part of the floor that was soaked with the chemicals, and it amplified the fire, of course, and soon the entire room was engulfed in flames, and that fire was out of control since the Flophouse did not have a fire suppression system of any form. Batman had cut Linda loose, and he says to her,
Madam, we can take you to the hospital.
And Linda says, "No, but thank you, Batman. Just take me back to the Blue Parrot Club so I can get in my car and drive home." And then Batman says to Robin,
Take her back to the Blue Parrot Club. I'm going to stay here and try to find those men who kidnapped Miss Page.
Robin acknowledges it, and him and Linda get into the Batmobile, and the Batmobile drives out of the alley. Later on at Wayne Manor, Bruce Wayne was with Dick in the living room, and Bruce was talking to Linda on the phone. I'm just super glad you're okay, Linda, but I wish you come and stay here at the manor with me because I have a state of the art security system in here. And Linda says to Bruce over the phone, "No, Bruce, I'll be fine. I'm just a little shaken up, but those men couldn't break me," she says. And then Bruce says, "Okay, babe. Listen, if you need anything, I'm just a phone call away." And he says good night to her and he hangs up. And then Dick asks Bruce, "So, what are we going to do with those guys?" And Bruce says to Dick, "It seems that they're really desperate for that ray gun that we have." And then Bruce says to Dick, "If they want that ray gun so bad, we'll give it to them." And Dick says, "You mean we're going to set up a trap for them?" And Bruce says to Dick, "Exactly." Like and subscribe. The end.